It's 11 p.m. You've been studying for 3 hours. Your textbook looks like a crime scene. Highlighters everywhere, notes in the margins, tabs on every other page. You've read the same chapter twice, maybe 3 times. And if I asked you to close that book right now and write down everything you remember, you know what would happen. You'd stare at a blank page. You highlighted half the chapter, but barely any of it actually stuck. That's genuinely not on you, though. Nobody really taught you how to study. They taught you subjects, gave you textbooks, said, go learn this. But the actual skill of learning, how your brain takes information and keeps it there, that part usually gets skipped. You were just supposed to figure it out. And honestly, most people never do. They keep rereading, keep highlighting, keep sitting at a desk for 6 hours and calling it effort. Then they wonder why someone else studies for 2 hours and gets a better grade. Those people aren't magically smarter. A lot of the time, they're just using better techniques. Techniques that feel so counterintuitive, they almost seem like cheating. But they're learnable, and they're backed by real evidence. Before we get into the actual method, let's get something straight. Studying is a terrible measure of virtue. Sitting at a desk for 6 hours doesn't mean you learned for 6 hours. Time spent is not the same as progress made. The variable that matters most is retrieval. Your brain learns better when it has to produce information, not just look at it again. That's the core idea behind almost everything here. Active output usually beats passive input, especially when you actually need to remember the material later. Real quick, this video is sponsored by ChatOn. We've all done it. You get a message from your landlord, your client, whoever, and you spend 11 minutes drafting a 2-sentence reply. Typing, deleting, retyping, questioning your entire grasp of the English language. ChatOn's AI keyboard just does that for you. You give it the rough idea, it gives you back something that sounds like a functioning adult wrote it. Revolutionary concept. They also have this YouTube summary feature. You paste a video link and it pulls out the key points. So instead of sitting through a 50-minute video where the actual content is maybe 4 minutes, you just get the 4 minutes. I'm honestly mad I didn't have this sooner. Ready-made prompts, various AI models to choose from. Everything you need structured in one place. Works on iOS, Android, web. Link is in my bio. Download ChatOn and stop wasting brainpower on stuff that doesn't need it. So instead of treating studying like a test of endurance, we're going to build a system around how learning actually works. And weirdly, the first step is to start at the end. Before you study anything, before you read a single page or watch a single lecture, take a test. A practice test on material you haven't learned yet. You will probably fail it. That is the entire point. I know that sounds wrong. Roediger and Karpika helped show this clearly in 2006, and later research has kept pointing in the same direction. Students who test themselves before studying often remember more later than students who only read the material first, because your wrong answers are a map. Every question you miss introduces you to a specific gap in your knowledge. You're surveying the terrain before you walk into it. Your brain notices those gaps, and when you encounter the correct information later, it has somewhere to go. This flips the entire study process. Instead of starting at page 1 and treating everything like it matters equally, you start with the questions. Open the end of chapter problems, look at past exams, check the syllabus keywords, write them down. If your teacher has ever said this will definitely be on the test, that's gold. Build what's called an exam skeleton map, a 1-page blueprint of what is most likely to show up. Past papers, teacher emphasis, syllabus structure. You're not guessing anymore. You're reverse engineering the exam before you study for it. Email the teacher if that's appropriate. Ask what topics carry the most weight. Pay attention to repeated hints. Then prioritize ruthlessly. When you know what the test is likely to care about before you study, the whole process starts to feel a little unfair. But knowing what to study is only half the problem. The other half is actually sitting down to do it. The resistance you feel when you think about studying, that's a pattern, not a personality flaw. Your brain has connected the word studying with discomfort. Patterns, though, can be interrupted. First tool is the 10-minute promise. You tell yourself you'll study for only 10 minutes, and you genuinely mean it. If 10 minutes is all you do, fine, that counted. But often, you sit down, do a quick review, test yourself on one small thing, and suddenly, 10 minutes becomes 25, then 45. Starting was the hard part. Once you're moving, the work carries you a little. Second tool is even simpler. Tell yourself, I'll just read one page. One page becomes two, and two becomes a section. Your brain can keep going once the wheels are turning. And this gets even easier when you set up environmental triggers. A specific chair, a specific lamp, a specific playlist if that's your thing. Do the same 60-second ritual every time, clear the desk, open the notebook, set a timer. Same sequence every single time. After a few weeks, sitting in that chair starts to feel like a switch flipping in your brain. Your brain recognizes the context and skips some of the resistance phase. On the catastrophic days, the days where nothing works and everything feels pointless, do something. One page, one flashcard, one recall attempt. I call that the no 0 days rule. And it's the gentlest rule in this entire system. Once you're actually sitting down, the next problem is what you do at that time. And the first answer is simple. Stop rereading. Full stop. I know rereading feels productive. You look at the page, the words seem familiar, your brain goes, ah, yes, I recognize this. And it feels like learning is happening. But a lot of the time, that's just the fluency illusion. Your brain confuses recognition with recall. The text looks familiar, so your brain files it under known. And your brain is wrong about this constantly, with absolutely no shame. Think of it like a messy desk. Rereading is looking at the mess, nodding and saying, yep, that's my stuff. You haven't organized anything. You haven't cleared anything. You've just confirmed the mess exists. Active recall works the opposite way. You close the book and try to retrieve what you just read from memory with nothing in front of you. The part that feels wrong, that struggle to pull the answer out, is where the learning happens. The struggling, the reaching for an answer you can almost touch. That's the work. Simplest version is the blurt method. Read a section once, close the book, write down or say out loud everything you can remember. Then open the book and check what you missed. Those gaps, the things you couldn't retrieve, that's your real study list. Fix those, then do it again. Flashcards work the same way, but only if you use them right. Question side first, force the recall, then flip. If you're just reading both sides in sequence, you're rereading with extra steps. Now, recall is powerful, but recall still has a timing problem. A German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus studied this in the 1880s, using himself as the test subject, memorizing nonsense syllables for months. The basic point still matters. A lot of what you study fades quickly, sometimes within a day, unless you return to it. Your brain is not broken. Your study method just needs to account for forgetting. The fix is studying the same thing across time. The spacing between sessions is what helps build retention. In practice, 0 apps required. After you study something, review it at 4 intervals. 24 hours later, 3 days later, 1 week later, 1 month later. A calendar and a pen. That's the whole system. Each review takes less time than the one before, because you're refreshing, not rebuilding. The first review might take 20 minutes, and by the fourth, it's 5. By that point, the information has a much better chance of staying in long-term memory instead of sitting in short-term storage waiting to evaporate. Set up a weekly review Sunday. Once a week, scan all your subjects, refresh the key points, update your plan for the coming week. One recurring ritual that quietly handles most of the decay problem before it becomes an emergency. A little every day usually beats one huge panic session at the end. Spacing handles when you study. But there is still the question of how you actually understand things in the first place. And this is where studying starts to look a little ridiculous, which, honestly, is often a good sign. The Feynman Technique. Named after physicist Richard Feynman, the method is simple. Pick a concept and explain it as if you're talking to a 5-year-old. Use short words, no jargon, no shortcuts. If your explanation falls apart, if you reach a point where you're waving your hands and going, and then it just sort of works, that's information, not embarrassment. You've just found the exact spot where your understanding breaks down. Now you know where to dig. You probably don't have a 5-year-old handy, so use your pillow, seriously. Explain the concept out loud, alone, in your room. Your pillow is patient, non-judgmental, has never failed an exam, just sitting there, absorbing information, living its best life. Try the 3-sentence compression game. If you can't explain a concept in 3 sentences, You might know the words around it, but the actual idea probably hasn't landed yet. Draw terrible diagrams, awful stick figures, messy sketches with arrows pointing everywhere. These often work better than beautiful notes because you're building meaning instead of copying it. The act of translating an idea into a weird little drawing forces your brain to process the concept more deeply than transcription ever could. Link concepts into a story too. Your brain remembers narratives better than isolated facts because memory follows connections. A story gives your brain a retrieval path instead of a disconnected pile. And if you want the advanced version, explain a concept like you're talking to a child first, then rewrite the explanation like you're teaching a graduate student. The gap between those two versions tells you what to study next. And that brings us to the trap that catches even the students doing everything else right. Reviewing topics you already understand. You flip through the material, everything makes sense, you nod along, you feel smart. That feels like studying. It's a performance for an audience of one. That audience is you, and you are being fooled. I noticed this in myself recently. I was reviewing notes I already knew cold, feeling productive while basically avoiding the harder stuff. Your grade is usually determined by your weakest topic. The high points matter less if the weak points keep collapsing. Fix the floor. If you did the pre-test earlier, your weak spots are already mapped. Your wrong answers are sitting right there, sorted and waiting. Go to them first and stay there. That's where the points live. Start a mistake notebook. Every wrong answer, every gap, every moment where you went, wait, what? Goes in one place. One notebook, one document. Before every exam, you open it and review. Almost nobody keeps one, and it's one of the simplest documents that can actually move your grade. For the subject that's truly destroying you, the one where you feel completely lost, the triage plan is simple. Find the 5 most tested concepts, just 5. Understand one at a time, using the Feynman method, then simulate exam questions on those 5. You don't need to master the entire subject overnight. You need to stop bleeding points on the topics that show up every single time. Once you know your weaknesses, the next problem is time, and specifically how to make it feel like you have more of it. I'll study all day is a wish, and wishes have a historically poor academic track record. A real plan sounds like this. Chapter 7, Active Recall, 45 minutes at my desk, starting at 2 p.m. Actually, forget the chapter number. The important part is the structure. Topic, method, duration, location, start time. Don't just say, I'll study later. Say what, where, and when. That's what turns it into a real plan. Time limits create urgency. Telling yourself to finish a chapter in 1 hour sounds aggressive until you've done it twice. Then, it starts to sound normal. Join our YouTube membership and get exclusive perks like early access to scripts, input on future topics about productivity, and connect with a like-minded community that gets it. Click join below and let's build your easier, more intentional life together. The constraint forces your brain to prioritize, to cut the fluff, to focus on what matters instead of wandering through the material like a tourist in a museum. Try a 30-minute emergency burst. All in, phone away, timer running, one specific task. Nothing else exists for those 30 minutes. You'll cover a surprising amount of ground when the clock is visible and the task is singular. Keep your sprints task-specific too. One sprint for memorizing vocabulary, a different sprint for solving practice problems, another for explaining concepts out loud. Don't mix them. Mixing dilutes both the memorization and the problem solving because your brain does better when it knows what mode it's in. We are, all of us, creatures that require artificial boundaries to do things that are obviously good for us. Set the timer. The first time you try a focused 30-minute sprint, it might feel impossible. By the 10th time, you can snap into it much faster. And when you study for 2 focused hours using these methods and retain more than you did after 6 hours of rereading, you'll understand why the title of this video isn't really an exaggeration. But sprints in the wrong order, on the wrong material, with no variation, that's just efficient suffering. Most students study in blocks. All of topic A until it's done, then all of topic B, then all of topic C. It feels organized and clean. The problem is, clean doesn't always mean effective. The alternative is called interleaving. Instead of finishing all of one topic before moving to the next, you rotate between topics within a single study session. This feels messy, and it feels harder. Because it is harder, and that extra difficulty is part of why it works. When you switch between topics, your brain has to distinguish between them. It has to ask, which concept applies here? Which formula fits this problem? What kind of question is this actually asking? That is exactly what the exam tests. The exam doesn't label every question for you. It mixes things together and asks you to sort them out. For practical scheduling, use a sandwich structure. Hard topic between two easier ones. This prevents the burnout that comes from stacking 3 difficult subjects in a row. Adapt your technique to the subject. Math needs worked examples and problem sets. You learn math by doing, full stop. History needs narrative structure and timelines, where you learn by connecting events into stories. Biology needs diagrams and cross-topic connections. Immune system links to inflammation links to vaccines. Those horizontal connections work as free recall anchors. Use them. Now, all of this still depends on the machine doing the work. You can have the best study plan in the world, but if you're running on 4 hours of sleep and snacks, your brain is going to fight you. The system runs on a brain, and biology has requirements. Sleep is when your brain consolidates what you studied during the day, strengthening the pathways you used and cleaning up the noise. 7 to 8 hours after an intense study session is basically a free upgrade happening while you're unconscious. All you have to do is let it happen. The all-nighter does the opposite. You're studying into a bucket with a hole in it. Information goes in, consolidation barely gets a chance, and by exam time, you're running on fumes. If you're forced into one, damage control means focusing only on the highest yield material and accepting the loss everywhere else. Exercise helps too. Even a 10-minute walk between study sessions can improve focus and make the next session feel less miserable. You can move a little during the day, or you can sit still for 3 hours and wonder why your concentration disappeared. The 5-minute reset between sessions matters more than you think. Stand up, stretch, drink some water, walk to the kitchen and back. Those are part of the study system, not breaks from it. Watch your fuel too. The mid-session energy crash is real and avoidable. Don't study on empty. Don't study on a sugar spike that's about to become a sugar crater. Steady energy, steady focus. Simple and almost universally ignored. And since your brain is always responding to its surroundings, you also need to look at where you're studying. Your environment is already making decisions for you. The room you're in, the objects around you, the sounds, the habits your brain has attached to that space. All of it is either helping you focus or pulling you away from it right now. The question is whether you designed that influence or just inherited it. Take your bed, for example. Your brain has spent years associating your bed with sleep, relaxation, videos, scrolling. When you try to study there, you're fighting your own brain's filing system. You will lose that fight more often than you win it. The fix is a dedicated study space. One specific spot that your brain learns to associate with focused work. Doesn't have to be fancy, a corner of a table, a chair by a window, a library desk. What matters is consistency. Over time, sitting down in that spot makes it easier to start because the environment is doing some of the work motivation was supposed to do. Build a 60-second pre-study ritual around it. Same sequence every time. Clear the surface, open the notebook, set the timer, put the phone face down or in another room. Your brain skips some of the resistance phase when it recognizes the context. Habit stacking amplifies this. Attach a small study action to something you already do every day. After breakfast, review 5 flashcards. After brushing your teeth at night, read your mistake notebook for 2 minutes. The habit already exists. You're just adding a small rider to it. And yes, some people study perfectly well in bed, surrounded by notifications, TV on in the background. Those people exist. I just refuse to build the system around them. Now, everything so far is great for a normal study week. But let's address the other situation. The one where it's 9 p.m. the night before the exam, and you have not, in any meaningful sense, studied. The night before crisis is a logistics problem. Treat it like one. Your 2-hour rescue plan starts with 20 minutes building the exam skeleton map. Pull up past papers, check the syllabus, identify the 5 to 7 topics most likely to appear. This is triage. You are accepting you can't learn everything and focusing on where the points probably are. Then spend 60 minutes doing active recall on those topics only, using the BLERT method. I'll read a section, close the book, write down everything you can retrieve, Check your gaps, fix them, move on. No rereading, no highlighting. Retrieval only on the highest priority material. After that, spend 20 minutes building a one-pager. Compress the most critical information onto a single page. Formulas, key terms, core arguments, essential dates. The act of compressing forces your brain to prioritize and process. The one-pager is both a study tool and a study method, happening at the same time. Then, for the last 10 minutes, stop. Get ready for bed and sleep. Whatever sleep you can get is worth more than another hour of diminishing returns. In a crisis, a small part of the content usually carries a large part of the points. Your job is to find that high-yield material and let go of everything else. Anything that takes more than 20 minutes to understand from scratch the night before will probably cost you more time than it earns you in points. Skip it, move to the next topic. Cut your losses with precision. This works as a rescue plan, and next time, you'll have the full system so you don't need the rescue. Because the real goal is not to survive every exam at the last second. The real goal is to build something that lasts. Motivation is unreliable. A system gives you something to fall back on when you don't feel inspired. Here's the whole system in 3 levels. Understand it, recall it, then test it under pressure. First, understand. Can you explain the concept in plain language? Can you pass the Feynman test? Simple words, no jargon? If yes, move on. If no, go back. Second, recall. Can you retrieve the information without the book in front of you? Blurt it, write it, say it out loud from memory. If yes, move on. If no, more active recall, more spacing, more retrieval practice. Third, simulate. Can you perform under exam conditions, timed, closed book, full questions? If you can do this and get it right, you own that topic. Then move on to the next weak spot from your mistake notebook. For a specific exam, build a 7-day countdown. On day 7, take the pretest, build the skeleton map, identify your weak topics. From days 6 through 4, use active recall and spaced repetition on weak areas, interleaved across subjects. On days 3 and 2, do practice exams under timed conditions, reviewing mistakes after each one. On day 1, light review, one-pager compression, early sleep. And write all of this down in your own study playbook, your rules, your favorite techniques, your timing preferences. Next time an exam approaches, you don't start from zero. You open the playbook and run the system. And there is one last thing that makes this start to feel like cheating. It's a loop. Better technique leads to faster learning, and faster learning makes the subject feel less hostile. When the subject feels less hostile, you study more willingly. When you study more willingly, you learn even faster. And around it goes. The first cycle is the hardest. You're building the system from nothing, fighting old habits, doing things that feel counterintuitive. But once you see active recall work, once spacing starts saving you, once your weak spots stop being mysterious, the system starts to carry its own weight. It took me about 3 weeks to feel that shift. I'm bad at studying is often just a description of an old method. Change the method and the description can change with it. So, 1 pass, the full system. Pretest before you study. Active recall over rereading. Spaced repetition across time. Feynman technique for understanding. Interleave your subjects. Protect your sleep. Design your environment. Compress into one-pagers. Simulate the exam. 9 tools, 1 system. Most students are still using passive, random, hopeful studying. This is active, structured, and deliberate. That gap is what makes it feel like cheating. You're just using the right tools. Good luck. And honestly, with the right system, you'll need a lot less of it. And hey, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Also, let me know your thoughts on what I just shared. Oh, and there's more. I've just started a Patreon to help support these videos and connect with you more directly. Check out the link in the description if you'd like to join.